Então, vamos entrar agora no painel principal. Eu gostaria de primeiro chamar a primeira palestrante. É uma palestrante internacional, então quem precisar de tradução simultânea é só pegar lá fora o fone, está disponível, e fazer um agradecimento especial à Louise, né, que se dispôs a atravessar o oceano para prestigiar aqui o evento. Muito obrigada, Louise. Louise Pulford é diretora da Social Innovation Exchange. Seu trabalho é ampliar a rede de organização de inovação social ao redor do mundo, hoje com mais de 1.500 atores. Louise é cogestora do Consórcio Europeu de Comunidades de Inovação Social. Antes de trabalhar na SIX, Louise também desenvolveu projetos na Young Foundation, incluindo o programa de liderança Uprising. Vamos lá. Convido também Saulo Barreto, que é um engenheiro de ideias com doutorado em análise estrutural de problemas complexos, cofundador do Instituto de Pesquisa em Tecnologia e Inovação, IPTI. Desde 2009, coordena o processo de consolidação do IPTI como Centro Internacional de Referência em Tecnologia Social em Santa Luzia, no Itanhém, no sul de Sergipe, um dos municípios mais pobres do Brasil. Bem-vindo, Saulo. E, como moderadora, eu convido a Ana Penido, que é diretora do Inspirare, cuja missão é inspirar inovações para melhorar a educação brasileira. Jornalista formada pela UFBA, com especialização em Direitos Humanos pela Universidade de Colômbia e em Gestão Social para o Desenvolvimento pela UFBA. Bem-vinda. Vamos começar com a Louise.
Obrigada. Bom dia. And that's it. I'm really sorry about my incredible lack of any other working language other than English. It's because I grew up in the UK. And we try to isolate ourselves from the rest of the world, effectively sometimes, which is why I'm really, really pleased to be here today, and which is why I do the job I do, which is a global job, not a UK-based job. So thank you so much to all of you partners for inviting me to be here. It's such a pleasure, and I know the conversation here today is a Brazilian one, and so I will keep my intervention short. But what I would like to do is just, and what I've been invited to do is just share with you some of my reflections from working globally around the world with social innovation. Do you need me to? Okay, thanks. I hope that the reflections that we have in the global work that we've done is useful for you, certainly not to copy here in Brazil, but for you to reflect on and design your own way forward here in Brazil. So I will just keep this global part short, but I'm here all day and I'm really looking forward to meeting many of you in person. So, 6. We are called the Social Innovation Exchange. It's customary to give some kind of social innovation definition at any of these kind of events. I hate to do that because you all have your own definitions, and we could be here all day discussing this, and this is not the purpose of us coming together today. But I will just share with you very briefly our perspective on social innovation. This is a kind of mishmash, a combination of different kinds of definitions that we use to just kind of get past this part of the discussion. So for us, a social innovation can be a product, a process, a service, a technology, an enabler, or a new way of thinking. And for us, the most important part of this social innovation discussion is that it improves the way that we do things in societies. They're both good for society and enhances our capacity to do things. It's collaborative, it's about doing things together, and it's about creating something that's new or better for the world. And that is the last thing I will say on the definition of social innovation. The other thing that I'm going to say is that social innovation is, of course, not new. People have been doing it for years and years and centuries. What is new, however, is I think in the last 10 years, there has been some language that has been put around it in the hope that people will do innovation more, that it's not some scary thing that one crazy person does in their backyard, but that it is something that more people will do. So we put some language around it, and many of you will have seen this. There are, again, several innovation process diagrams that anyone that's worked in innovation for years has and uses. This is something that we used when we developed when I was, this is a horrible microphone. I'm really sorry. This is something that we developed when I was working at the Young Foundation with a man called Jeff Mulgan. And this, we use this process because it is a way to look at different methods and tools that people can use if they're doing this kind of work. It's also a way to show the direction that we're heading in this kind of work, which is to create systemic change. And it's also a way to justify that we don't need to do everything at the same time. It's a way for us to look at ourselves as part of an ecosystem and for us to say that actually, I don't need to be doing all of these things. I can be generating ideas or I can be supporting the generational ideas while someone else is prototyping and testing them. I do not need to be doing scaling at the same time as creating systems change. So it's a way for us all to place ourselves as well. So we use that as a process. But in terms of building ecosystems, actually, can anyone hear me if I just talk like this?
Do you want to try another mic?
Yeah, maybe. Okay. Oh, this is better. Okay, thank you. So, in terms of building ecosystems, and this is what we're here, I think, to talk about a little bit today. There are two ways we think about building ecosystems at SIX. The first one is a set of elements that are the kind of the stuff that we're all made of. So we think in any successful ecosystem, you need a combination of four things: of people, of power, of money, and of knowledge. We also think that there are different sectors involved in building ecosystems, and in a second I'll tell you about some of the work that we've done globally with these different sectors. But we really believe there is a role for business, for foundations, for universities, for governments, for innovation hubs and organizations, and of course for NGOs and for people. Before I go on, let me just tell you a little bit about SIX and what we do. So, SIX, many of you will know, is a global network. We don't actually talk about ourselves as a network anymore. We talk about ourselves as an exchange. And an exchange is really important for us because a network can sometimes be one way. An exchange means that everybody who is involved gets the same value. It's reciprocal. It's about people helping each other. People don't come to do favors for each other. People come to things that we do at SIX because they know they're going to get something out of it. So the way we talk about ourselves is that we're an exchange. We're built on value. We're built on relationships. We're built on knowledge. And we believe that those kind of exchanges, this is our theory of change, if you will, we believe that that kind of exchange is what drives social change. Any change in society needs to be, or will definitely be, the result of people who are working together, talking together, collaborating, sharing, understanding where we all sit in an ecosystem together. And what we do is we facilitate purposeful conversations, not any conversations. We all don't have enough time to go to all of the conferences that we are invited to. We could all go to a conference every day, not useful to our lives. What is useful is about having purposeful conversations, and that's something that I think that you guys have really developed here. The way you've designed this agenda is about having a purposeful conversation. And our job is to challenge and inspire people to use innovation more to solve the challenges that we're facing today. So that's what we do at SIX on a global level. And when we were established, our job was really just to connect people, help each other find people, develop a community, a network of people who are like-minded. Our job we see today is more than that. It's about driving a field, because this work is so urgent. Our challenges are so huge. It needs more energy than just connecting people. Networks are not enough for us. Networks that drive change, networks that drive purposeful conversations is what we need to be growing. In terms of the kind of activities we do, we group them into these three chunks. The first one is convening, and the reason that we convene people, as I said, is about having these purposeful conversations to really drive the field forward. Capacity building is huge for us, and capacity building we see is not just 2-day innovation trainings. Capacity building is a lifelong activity. It's years-long relationship building. Going into a community and doing some 101 innovation training is not enough, which is why we believe in the exchange following these trainings. We also build knowledge and learning in the field, and we do that in different ways for different kinds of people. But what we want to do is help mainstream institutions access social innovation, knowledge and discussions, which they may not usually be a part of. And our impact we can see in the way that we work with different sectors. So, firstly, the curation of experiences, which I talked about a little bit first. A big part of our work is with philanthropic institutions these days. We want to increase the impact of philanthropy. We wholeheartedly believe that philanthropic foundations are not making the impact they need to in society. These are the institutions that have less accountability, less restricted by timelines, should have less bureaucracy. There is so much opportunity for so much money in society to be doing much better, and it's just not quite good enough yet. And luckily, there are a group of philanthropic foundations globally that we've been working with, and other institutions like Jiffy and the work that is done here by Celia, where we're finding those people who are really at the front, who are really at the edge, who are really trying to do something. Our biggest challenge is how do we work with those front runners, those innovators in this field, to influence the rest of them, because we're really just working on the very, very edges at the moment. Similarly, we work with universities a lot. Universities come to us again because they are an incredible resource that could be doing huge amounts of things in society and the communities around them, and they are not. They are just institutions quite often that are disconnected to anything that's near them. And so one of the things that we do through 3-6 is we challenge universities to rethink that purpose. Universities be doing a lot more. We do a lot of work with policymakers at city, regional, national government levels to influence them to get social innovation on their innovation agendas. Many innovation agendas around the world are only focused on technological innovation, design innovation, scientific innovation. We believe that social needs to be part of every single innovation discussion. And finally, the fifth thing, or the fifth kind of impact area that we have is a kind of result of the work that we're doing. Because actually what we're really trying to do this is to empower organizations to innovate. And we want every single innovation to be rethinking about their role as our society becomes more and more challenging. Just want to stop on this foundations work for a minute. This is an example of the work that we're doing, because I know there are some foundations in the room. We just want to increase the effective funding for systems change and social innovation. That's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to channel more money into this social innovation work. And we're doing that in two ways. The first one is we create several small, closed, intimate, global retreats. Many in Canada. I've just come back from doing one in Australia recently. Because we know that most of the people running these foundations do want to do things differently, and they are having questions that are keeping them awake at night. And we believe the way to help them answer that question at night is not to produce a report for them, is to help them answer those questions themselves. So we believe that 2 or 3 day retreats is a really, really good way of doing that, and that's the kind of impact we've seen already. But also we produce insights. This links to our knowledge work. We produce insights that help people make different decisions. We produce these insights on how foundations and philanthropic organizations can use data differently, how people can increase their impact, how they can access discussions around systems change, how they can use strategic foresight in a different way. And that counts for all the organizations we work for. And this is just a bit of a sense of the kind of partners that we're working with at the moment. So huge global reach, and it's fun. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about our global tour of social innovation. So I'm just going to give you some of the examples and reflections of some of the work that we're doing around the world, to hopefully inspire the rest of the conversation for the rest of the day. So I'm actually not going to talk about North America at all. I'm only going to talk about Canada, because all of these examples are actually just Canadian. So most of the work that we're doing in Canada with organizations who are interested in building ecosystems are either through foundations, through innovation hubs, or through governments. And so I think McConnell Family Foundation, for those of you who don't know them, are probably the leading foundation in the world who are really focused on building social innovation ecosystems. They invested, amongst many other things, 10 million over 10 years to build this thing called SIG, Social Innovation Generation, which was a national partnership between a university, a foundation, a technology institute, and a community NGO across Canada. And SIG's role was to build a national discussion on social innovation. SIG's role was to build a social finance strategy for social innovation. And so McConnell's investment through that innovation partnership was huge in terms of government influencing. And I think this report here, Inclusive Innovation, is probably one of the most forward-thinking government reports that came from the Department of Finance. Has a longer name than that, which I won't say. It came from the Department of Finance, just released 2 weeks ago. And I think it is the most comprehensive strategy of a government engaging in social innovation that we've seen so far. That really was the result of all the work that McConnell was doing with SIG over the last 10 years. So it's been a long journey, but that combination between a foundation, innovation hubs, and government, I think, has really increased Canada's capacity to do this kind of work. We've also been working in Europe for a number of years, and most of our work with Europe has been around, and I think most of the trend in terms of social innovation in Europe has been around universities and governments. And so at the bottom you can see a timeline of the work that we've been doing with the European Commission. So in 2007, 2008, 2009, we worked with the president of the European Commission at that time, who was just developing a new innovation strategy. And we convinced him to include social in that innovation strategy. So in 2010, when their new 5-year Innovation Union strategy was used, it included the word social innovation. And since then, the Commission have invested a huge amount in social innovation. But their investment have mainly been in terms of research. And so actually one of the things I think Europe has done extremely well is created a narrative, created a shared definition, and they've essentially forced people to collaborate, which isn't necessarily always a good idea and does have has had some casualties along the way. But in principle, that the idea that all Commission funds require there to be at least 6 or 8 partners. These 6 or 8 partners have to all come from different countries, and they have to include different kinds of institutions, which include universities. So huge cultural shocks. All these people coming from completely different backgrounds, working in different languages, have managed to work together on programs that average 3 or 4 million euros over 3 or 4 years. And what they've done is they've built up a huge bank of knowledge on social innovation, huge amount of research. We'd be very happy to share some of it. They've almost been too effective because actually the people who are doing research now seem to be repeating some of the research that was done in 2011. So there's clearly some work to be doing on network building still in Europe. But the point is that they have been able to create this narrative. And so we've been working with the Commission and various actors all the way through these last 10 years to help support that kind of work. So that's Europe. A little bit different in Asia. Also a bit odd to have photos of yourself on your own presentation, so apologies about that. But governments and universities, again, are huge in the work, and these are particularly examples from Southeast Asia. So many of you will know the mayor of Seoul in South Korea. He is, I think, calls himself the only social innovation mayor in the world. And I don't think there are any other people that call themselves that. Whether there are other social innovation mayors in the world is clearly debatable as we sit here in Brazil. I recognize you have a history of this. But the mayor of Seoul was a political activist for many, many years. Never meant to be in politics. He's now in his third term of running a 12 million person city. And actually what he's done to the city is flipped the role of what a mayor should do. So he has created Seoul to be a listening city. He has an ear that sits outside of City Hall where people can go and tell him their problems, and that ear has a direct line into his office and his team, so he can understand the words of the citizens a lot. He has opened up City Hall, so it's a place that people go and hang out, not just a place that is for the mayor. He's changed the relationship entirely to the extent that he now goes and lives regularly, every couple of years, inside a different community for about a month to really understand the problems that are in that community. So I was just in Seoul a couple of weeks ago in 45 degrees, where he was living in a non-air-conditioned shack with his wife for a month to really understand the problems on the ground there. It was absolutely incredible what he's done. So he's a real leading role in Asia in the way that governments can do it, but we definitely see more at a city level in Asia these things happening. And then this is a project that we just launched in Hong Kong recently, which is a collaboration of all the universities in Hong Kong who are coming together and saying, actually, we need to learn from each other a little bit more. We don't want to collaborate because we're universities, and of course we're competitions, so why would we talk to each other? But actually we do realise that we need to do something differently to improve society. So this is a Hong Kong project, and then CSIN up there, which is a network of universities across Southeast Asia which are opening themselves up to be better resources for the community. So, and finally, let me just talk quickly about Australia. So Australia is very different again. So Australia, much more a foundations well, but the foundations are much different in Australia. They're usually one or two people run. And this Australian Centre for Social Innovation is probably one of the leading innovation centres in the world, TAXI. And their focus is very much design thinking. And service design, and the way that they've been working with government at all levels has just been incredible, and the kind of projects that they've been running family by family is probably one of the best documented one that which many of you have heard about before. Oh God, finally, and Africa. The continent of Africa I will cover very quickly. But actually what we're seeing in Africa is the rise of innovation hubs, and we did some work with some NGOs over the last few years, working with different innovation hubs across the African continent. Much more tech focused, much less foundations, much less government work. Latin America, how can I fight? The world is huge, there's a lot going on. Again, Latin America, the work that we've been doing is very much a lot in Colombia, so a huge amount of work in Colombia in terms of the government and their social innovation strategy. And the new Nesta project, States of Change, has just been working for the last 6 months with the government in Colombia to build innovation capacity inside them. And again, we have a lot of work that we've been doing with universities there too. So, I'm actually going to finish there because the question really is for you and the conversations today. What combination of these different elements of the ecosystem are going to be really, really important for the work that you're doing? What's already happening? What needs to be strengthened? What do we need to maybe ignore and not work with for a little bit? As you can see, the innovation stories that I've told in all of the different countries around the world very few of them have every single part of the innovation ecosystem present, yet they are still doing really incredible work. So whilst that is whilst having every sector involved is absolutely the direction that we should be heading, how can we exploit the sectors that are most ready to be worked with in different places is a really great question that I think we're going to have today. But wherever you are in the world, how do we build up the people? How do we build up the capacity of the individuals that are in society to do this work? So important. How do we influence the power, whether that power is coming from governments or whether it's coming from foundations? How do we access the money that's available? And I know Saulo is going to talk about different kind of models for that. And how do we build a knowledge base around this? How do we build a shared understanding? If we don't have the European Commission about to put 4 million euros over 4 years for us to do a load of research on this, what are the other ways that we can build a knowledge base on social innovation that can influence the work that you're doing in society? So I know there are so many organisations here, the partners, I know the work that you're doing is absolutely incredible. The question is, how can we connect these things so that the ecosystem feels like a connected one rather than a disparate one, where you're all working together and where you're all supporting each other from your various angles and areas of expertise? I guess that's a question that you guys are going to be answering today. So, thank you very much for inviting me. I hope you enjoyed this small global tour, and I guess I'm going to hand over to Saulo.